Christine Worsley. Joining us from our house and our first segment of Chalk Talk.
Chalk Talk.
My mom, Christine Worsley.
Nice.
My mom, Christine Worsley, Dean of Kinesiology, Athletic Director at Diablo Valley College. Mom, how are we doing?
We're good. How are you, gentlemen?
Doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on the show today, Mom. So we're going to go into our first Chalk Talk here and talk about why there's smaller amounts of men's volleyball teams than there are women's volleyball teams in the nation.
No, I think, we have to get into, first of all, right now with the whole, we went into this before that the Save Our Sports whole thing, but we need to get into exactly why there is an issue and what we have to talk about first is the Title IX discrepancy. And we're gonna put this to you, Mother. What exactly, when Title IX came into effect in 1972, what exactly was the original purpose of that bylaw?
Well, Title IX, obviously, it affected, basically it had to do with equity within the educational system, and schools that are now federally funded or have federal funding had to meet certain requirements in terms of equity across the board for men and for women in terms of educational opportunity. It wasn't necessarily geared toward athletics, but it had to do with educational opportunity between men and women. But where it really gained its notoriety and impact really happened within athletics. And it has since expanded. It's broad-based. I mean, it encompasses so many more things now beyond educational opportunity and athletics. But that's really where it started. That was the grassroots movement.
So to kind of break it down, to kind of get to the question here. So in order to be a D1 team, you have to have at least D1 program. You have to have at least 16 D1 programs in order to be kind of reach that level, right?
So that's an NCAA rule.
Yeah.
So Title IX is again governed. It's a federal statute. And so all schools receiving federal aid, meaning schools that receive federal financial aid, which basically is every single institution in the United States, they have to comply with Title IX rules. And that means that so every year they actually have to do a report. They have to claim how they're meeting Title IX requirements. And then they have to submit data that is required by the federal government on an annual basis to meet the burden of proof. So, and that goes for every school, whether it's Division I, NCAA, NAIA, community college, private, public, all of these institutions that receive federal funding have to do that. And if they are not compliant with Title IX guidelines, then they could lose their federal funding, which means they lose their financial aid for students. So it's really imperative for them to maintain that balance.
And I think the first thing I know, when I came in to the University of Hawaii, I wasn't exactly sure on this, but a lot of people get this mixed up. Is Title IX, when they refer to actual funding in NCAA programs, it's not referring to, or it's not based on, all right, they have one program here that has to be matched, like one women's program. It has to do with percentage of scholarships. And could you go into a little bit?
Title IX is not about equality, it's about equity. So when you're looking at an experience of a student athlete, whether they're in a men's program or a women's program, the experience of that student athlete has to be identical. So if you have a football player, you know that you're going to be spending more money on them just based on the equipment alone. Versus a swimmer, right? You're going to be spending more money, but is their experience similar? Is the level of coaching similar? Is their locker rooms, team rooms, are they getting, adequate academic support? Are they getting, is their travel schedule meet minimum protocols of their conference? Those types of things, right? But Title IX, each institution has to basically claim how they want to be Title IX compliant, and there's 3 ways to do that. The first way is straight ratio. We have, and it has to do with your institutional enrollment numbers. So if your college has most institutions have more females than they have males. So it's really hard for them to be what's called prong one compliant, which means you look at your institutional enrollment numbers and you say, okay, we're going to have X number of men's teams and X number of women's teams it's going to be equal to the number of enrollment we have at our college. Most colleges cannot meet that. Prong two is more along the lines of, it gives you a chance to balance. If you're prong two, you're in a transition phase within your institution. So for example, if you're an all women's college and all of a sudden you go co-ed and you want to add men's sports, you have a length of time that they give you, so many years, to be able to meet the Title IX standards. So you're prong two compliant. Prong three is the most prevalent means of being Title IX compliant, and that has to do with what they call an interest-based survey. And so most college students, when they apply to school, they have to, when you're applying in your application, there's a survey that every single student has to fill out. If you could be an athlete, what sport would you like? And so they have to keep that data, and that's part of the data that gets submitted to the federal government at the end of the year with their Title IX requirements. So for Division I, in terms of number of scholarships that are issued, all of that is based, yes, on your Title IX ratios and numbers. And in regard to schools that have larger male scholarship offerings, they have to balance that with more women's offerings.
Okay.
So
and so the way that ties in, I think we've gotten a lot of questions from people on our Instagram here, how this ties into why the reasoning behind why there's so many women's programs and opportunities for women's volleyball players to move on to the collegiate level versus the limited amount of men's programs. I think first of all, it has to do with the amount of funding and the amount of interest from spectators, obviously, and what the amount of money that they're making, because most programs outside of BYU and the University of Hawaii are going to be very limited in income. They're like, men's volleyball is not income.
Generating.
Yeah. They're not income generating at all. And so on the women's side, you see that specifically more in the Power 5 conferences. But I think the Title IX thing also plays into that. They're not willing to bring in a men's volleyball program that's not going to generate money for them and then take away men's scholarships from programs that could generate money at their schools.
I have a question. Mom.
Sure.
So for a little background for our listeners here, men's volleyball gets 4.5 scholarships to kind of pass around. Women's volleyball gets 12. Football gets what,
85.
85. Basketball is another 14 or around that number. So I was wondering, okay, since football takes up most of the scholarships for men's, right? How come when you have schools like UCSB or Long Beach, the men's program doesn't get more scholarships since they're not taking up
that scholarship limit was set by the NCAA.
Okay.
You would create an inequity within programs if that were the case across the country. And you can't create an inequity within a sport. So everybody's going to get the same.
Because otherwise there'd be a huge disadvantage for schools that do have football, for example, or something like that, like we do. Gotcha.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay. Thank you, Mom. Thanks for joining us on the show. For all those who've been wanting on the show, we delivered right here, and she gave us.
She's also a self-proclaimed barber. She's been
She refuses to take the buzzer on me though, which I wish she would though.